podcasting, Tiffany? Why podcasting?
Well, it started a little bit accidentally. Like you, I believe a lot in content marketing. So getting out there, organic content, blog posts, so really when I started OMH Agency, I had what I called my secret sauce, where you have a website, and that's the core. And every page on your website is like an employee who should have a job to do and a way to do it. And from there, it was all about having a blog post that was, answering the most boring, basic, fundamental questions that your clients are always asking, because guess what? They're looking it up on Google. You should be the one that they see. From there, it was all about, having an email campaign that goes back to the blog post, and then social media that goes back to the blog post. After about a year, we had, and I don't even think it was a year, it was just a few months into our company, I had a client who was a home inspector. And, you do content. So, sometimes when you're doing the formal editorial calendar and things like that, imagine how boring it was for my poor writer. Like we're going to write about all the topics related to home inspection. And this home inspector was in Seattle, Washington. And I don't know if any of you who are from Washington State, from especially Western Washington, mold is an issue. It's a major issue. And if you're in home inspection, your clients are constantly asking you about mold. And so for me, I was like, we have to talk about mold, but these guys are awesome. It's like one of the best home inspectors. They have the great remediation for it. And so anytime we would write a blog post about mold, they would get frustrated. They would rewrite it. They'd be like, every time you guys write, but we're just like, we were using high level sources and, going to the top, like, what are they saying? What does the CDC say? And they still would just be so frustrated. And so and they're like, stop writing about mold. So I called them and I'm like, look, that's unacceptable. Like, we have to write about mold. Like, if you don't write about mold,
the people are demanding mold information.
I know. And see how boring it is, but that's the fact. Like, people try to be too fancy, right? Yeah. So they're like, I want to be flashy. And I'm like, no, you want to be found. When people are looking up mold, you want to be the one that comes up. And if you're not writing, and it comes up, like, if you do a search, like if you do a scan, like it comes up a lot, like it's a high search term and not that competitive. And so I'm like, no, this is gold. For years, you're going to be at the top of this list. And so finally I said, look, I'm going to record an interview with you guys, and we're going to do some blog posts out of it. And I feel like it wasn't a podcast, but I feel like that was my grain that started my passion for taking these interviews and creating this space where business owners who don't want to have anything to do with marketing, they're like, I just want to hire somebody, make me famous, right? Like, I want everybody calling us for this, for our industry. I want to be the one. Yeah. And I was so driven to do that I felt like, and as a business owner, like I was in my early 20s when Dwayne and I started businesses. And so I'm like, I get it. I know about overhead. I know about busting out and being noticed when everybody else is competing for the same space. And so I just, and then having that voice, like having the voice of the business owner, when the business owner is like, dude, seriously, I have a job to do. I can't be fussing with blog posts, like even looking through an editorial calendar, they're like, do I have to do this? Or, And so from there, in 2017, I started hearing about, podcasts, and I had an assistant, and she brought it to me, and she's like, this is you, like, here is this article about podcasting, and this is how you approach marketing. It's how you approach content. You should totally do this. You should have a podcast. And if you don't think you should read this article, and then you're going to be sold. So I was like, this is great. And I had moved to Billings in 2012, and I still was having a hard time really getting to know people and getting to know the business community. I felt a little bit like I felt like an alien, quite honestly, let's just be real. And so I loved the people I was meeting, but I just was having, it snows all the time. We're all kind of holed in. We were just social distancing before it was cool. So it's like, I was just like, okay, a podcast. And then I'm going to interview business owners, but I also want to interview like nationally known people or globally known people. And even before that, I'd written a book, and I'd done exactly the same thing where I wrote a book about fitness. And so I interviewed all these like Gilad, who was like an Olympian. And then I also interviewed like local fitness people. And so I kind of took that experience and I thought, I want to do the same thing where I'm getting to know locals. I'm getting to know, Neil Patel, who's like, the guru of SEO. Yeah. Like I think I only had about 20 episodes total on my first podcast. It was called Chat and Grow. It's still published if anyone wants to look it up. But I thought all these voices are relevant. If we're not on the street talking to people fighting the fight, while we're also bringing in the brightest minds that we know in the space, I just have a natural curiosity. And so it really became a selfish version of what I was doing for my clients. And so I'm like, I'm just going to like take all this out of it. Although I have a huge passion for SEO and using that content, it was more about meeting people. If I didn't meet people, I wouldn't have done it, because even though I know it's important for me to have content, it's just easier for me. Like I can just write blog articles. I have my own voice. Like it's just easy. Yeah. But I really wanted to meet people. And so I didn't offer podcasting services. I continued to do the same structure that I'd always done because it worked. And my clients were making a lot more money. They were getting leads. And so I just kind of puttered along, and I didn't really want to make systems around podcasting because I liked how I did it. And I didn't want my clients like messing with my system. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. I just love it. Well, then the great, pivot of 2020, it wasn't a coincidence that I went into podcasting. I had by then, I shut down Chat and Grow because someone had brought up this idea of not only meeting the right clients and collaborators through podcasting, which I already was doing and absolutely loved. I was starting to get introduced to these concepts of, micro content and doing it deliberately instead of before we were just kind of doing it, but doing it as like a core part of our marketing strategy. So I took, but then more importantly, meeting my best clients. So writing down who are my best clients and how can I get in front of them and how can I make that something that people want to listen to? So I started a podcast called Breakaway Agents. I was marketing for real estate agents. I've been in real estate. I mean, my husband and I were agents in the early 90s. It was the kind of websites I was building in the 90s were real estate. So, I mean, I can market real estate in my sleep. I know how to, get clients. I know how to close deals. So I was like, this is easy. Yeah. And so I thought, this is a piece of cake. I know how to talk to real estate. They're my people, like I learned how to be So I started Breakaway Agents, and I only interviewed people who sold over 20 million in real estate. And so I only wanted top producers because I didn't want to talk anyone into marketing. I don't want anybody to go, I'm just going to go out and do referrals. Like I didn't want those people. I just wanted people who understand marketing. And interviewed them, and it was awesome. And I don't know if you probably realize this, but getting in front of real estate agents as a marketer is very difficult. And so if you're going in front of the top ones, they typically have assistants, and so there's quite a barrier. But I was like, I'm going to test this. And I always use my podcast for testing. So as people are listening to them, just keep that in mind. I'm always testing when I'm doing my show. So I did these, I was like very deliberate about who was on my show and did that. So, and the system worked great. I was able to bring in clients. They were high-taking clients. Everything was happy. 2020 hit. And I had actually at the time, I had 2 business coaches that were helping me. And both of them out of the clear blue sky independently went, you should just show people how you podcast because it's crazy. Like, because I have a natural curiosity. So share with people like how to express that in a podcast, but then also how to use this meeting people and developing relationships while also caring about the listener. So that part of it, but also the micro content. So that's how all that evolved into what we do now. And that's my story.
Yeah.
Stick it to it.
Thanks for watching Practical Talk on YouTube. Listen to full episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, be sure to hit that subscribe button.